2020 was widely regarded as the worst year ever. They had no idea how bad things would get in 2022. Not only did we not get rid of COVID, but we also caused major inflation, massive supply chain problems, and now a conflict in Eastern Europe, which is causing a lack of wheat and oil on the market, driving up prices globally. Some predict a recession, others predict depression, and others predict stagflation. The issue is that the Fed has few options right then. California's governor proposed giving people cash to compensate them for rising gas prices, but this isn't a viable answer. We tried it in 2020 and saw tremendous inflation. The 2020 crisis might have been considerably worse if it hadn't been for money printing. Considering how the stock market behaved in the early days of the pandemic, let's hope something like this never happens again. However, given current events, there is a significant likelihood that we may see another financial catastrophe shortly. And despite the fact that banks do not want you to know these 5 truths about the impending market meltdown, we will be discussing them with you today. Here are a few things you should know if you want to be prepared and take advantage of the next crisis. Therefore, subscribe and turn on the notification bell to be notified anytime we release new videos. And now, let's get started with the first one, shall we? Number 1. You can't solve every problem with the printing press. Once your company goes bankrupt and you run out of money, you should cut back on your expenditures. Possibly move in with your parents for a period, stop driving and use public transportation, or borrow money to maintain your level of living. You will, however, have to repay the money sooner or later. Can you borrow money to maintain your quality of living if your second business fails as well? Maybe. However, how many times can you do that? Once? Twice? Thrice? And that has been the US's problem since the dollar became the world's reserve currency. To get out of the financial crisis, they kept borrowing money without experiencing the repercussions. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Ideally, every firm that made or insured non-performing loans should have suffered, but the government believed that if these companies failed, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people would lose their jobs. Why not take out a loan to help them out and pay off the bill later? Instead of 10 or 15 years, the United States will be out of the crisis in a few years. We were compelled to remain in our homes in 2020, but the people needed money to pay their bills, so the government provided them with stimulus checks. Whereas, when businesses saw this, they also appealed for it as well, and were also provided with as much money as they needed. As a result, they were able to emerge from the crisis rather quickly. If this had been done in any other country, hyperinflation would have resulted because the currency isn't held as a reserve currency around the world. All countries, of course, print money, but not to the same extent as the United States. However, this does not imply that the printing money culture has no bounds. How many more crises can we resolve by increasing the money supply is the question. We are uncertain. However, if the country falls into another recession as a result of rising oil prices and the conflict in Ukraine, the country will not be able to push its way out of the crisis by injecting more cash into the economy, because the Federal Reserve intends to keep raising rates to combat inflation. Rates were only lifted by 0.25% in March, but that's how the Federal Reserve works. They would not immediately raise faith by a large amount, but rather gradually. Number 2. What if the dollar stops being global currency reserve? People require a means to safeguard their assets. An excellent example is gold assets. Of course, it's a really useless asset. There aren't many things you can do with it. Yet, despite its flaws, it gets the job done. You can invest a portion of your money in real estate, equities, and bonds, but at the end of the day, you need a liquid asset. Because the dollar is anchored by the world's leading economy, it accounts for 60% of global reserves. People will lose faith in the dollar if they watch the Federal Reserve printing trillions of dollars without blinking. They will begin to consider alternative currencies as reserve currencies, such as the Chinese yuan, which currently accounts for over 10% of global currency reserves. Number 3. Cash is king. This may give you the idea that keeping cash is a huge mistake. While it may be frightening that your dollars may soon be worthless, these changes do not occur suddenly. The British Empire, for example, has been on the decline since the turn of the century, but its money remained the worldwide reserve currency. In reality, even after World War I, the British pound accounted for 50% of global currency reserves, and it was only after World War II that the British pound lost its position as the global currency reserve. So while these kinds of shifts do not occur instantaneously, recessions do occur frequently. Financial crises are an inevitable aspect of economic development, and during a crisis, cash reigns supreme. People are afraid to spend because the economy is struggling, which exacerbates the issue. As a result, even the most valuable enterprises struggle and are frequently sold for a fraction of their true value. That's why it's always a good idea to keep some of your money in cash, especially now that it appears that we are on the verge of a recession. Number 4. Crypto is going to boom. In the midst of everything taking place in the world, unstable assets become extremely volatile. That includes cryptocurrency, but the exact reverse is occurring. Cryptocurrency is surging. One of the primary foundations of advancement is the movement of money around the world. And since the war is taking place in this region of the world, both countries are turning into crypto as a way out. You can give cryptos to the Ukrainian central bank. Since Visa and MasterCard have sanctioned all cards issued within Russia, Russia's elite 30 are using cryptocurrency to get their wealth out of the country. Since the start of the conflict, Bitcoin has been thriving. It has already increased by 15%. I'm not saying anything, but crypto is currently far more reliable than some of the world's largest IT corporations, like Facebook. Number 5. Don't let anything distract you. Increased fuel prices, alarming inflation, and global wars compel you to undertake emotional decisions. The world has always been in a state of chaos. We had the housing meltdown a little over a decade ago, and certain nations, such as Greece, have yet to recover. We had the dot-com bubble before that, and we even had a world war, the largest war in human history, in which nuclear weapons were engaged. So what we're seeing now is nothing like what we've seen before. Of course, there's always the risk that things will deteriorate, but you have no control over it. Your task is to keep focus on your financial objectives while also adapting to changing circumstances. That is the only way to achieve financial independence. I hope we've enlightened you through this video. So if you want success in your life and business, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, because we will be uploading more videos like this. Thanks for watching.